Facts are stranger than fiction. Sometimes real-life stories are more terrifying than those in horror movies. Some are equal parts horrifying and tragic. All of them serve to remind us another time that there is true darkness to be found in our world, far beyond what our imaginations could ever raise. Now we can watch the top 10 scary stories. Number 10. The Child of Rage. Child of Rage is a 1992 American biographical drama television film directed by Larry Pierce, starring Ashley Peldon and Mel Harris. The film is based on the true story of Beth Thomas, who had severe behavioral problems as a result of being sexually abused as a child. The film was shot in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, with classroom scenes being filmed at Maryhill Elementary School. It premiered on CBS on September 29, 1992. The story of Beth Thomas is as heartbreaking because it's frightening. She was a pretty daughter with striking blue eyes who lost her mother when she was a year old. Beth and her brother, Jonathan, were left with their biological father, who sexually abused them. She was only 19 months old and Jonathan 7 months once they were removed by Child Protective Services. The small boy had been left in his cot all day, every day, leaving him with an unusually shaped head. The siblings were adopted by a childless couple who soon realized all wasn't well with Beth. By the time she was 6, a documentary had been made about the lass and her extremely worrying and violent behavior. Within the documentary, released in 1990, Beth talks about her adoptive parents' habit of locking her in her room to stop her from stabbing them to death. She also talks about how she herself had sexually abused her younger brother, tortured the family dog, and killed baby birds she had found during a nest. At one point, Beth even smashed Jonathan's head into a concrete floor, trying to kill him. Beth was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, which left her unable to make any attachment to a caregiver. Her adoptive parents, Tim and Julie, eventually turned to controversial therapist Connell Watkins, who offered to assist them. Within a year, Beth's symptoms improved to the extent that she could show remorse for her actions towards her brother. Years later, Beth Thomas has turned her situation around. She could even be a knowledgeable nurse and has published a book with the assistance of her second adoptive mother.
Are people afraid of you, Beth?
Uh-huh.
Who's afraid of you, Beth?
John.
Your brother. And why is your brother afraid of you?
Because I hurt him so much.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9. Chichijima Incident. The Chichijima Incident, also referred to as the Ogasawara Incident, occurred in late 1944 when Japanese soldiers killed and consumed 5 American airmen on Chichijima within the Bonin Island. 9 airmen escaped from their planes after being shot down during bombing raids on Chichijima in September 1944. 8 were captured. The 9th, the only one to evade capture, was future U.S. President George H.W. Bush, then a 20-year-old pilot. After the war, it was discovered that the captured airmen had been beaten and tortured before being executed. And Japanese General Yoshio Tachibana ordered that 4 of the corpses be cooked and their livers and thighs eaten alongside vegetables and drenched in soy sauce. The Japanese officers responsible for the horrific cannibal incident on Chichijima were later found guilty of and executed for war crimes during trials held in Guam.
My torpedo bomber and I took off from the USS San Jacinto. We were part of Task Force 58. The very next day we were to move south under Halsey's fleet to be part of Task Force 38. And so I knew.
Number 8. The Porthole Murder. Eileen Isabella Ronnie Gibson, better known as Gay Gibson, was a young actress thought to possess been murdered on a cruise ship by a deck steward 70 years ago. May have died of natural causes, it's been claimed. James Cam was convicted of killing Gay Gibson after he admitted throwing her body out of a porthole during a voyage to Southampton in 1947. He always insisted this was wiped out panic, which she had died following a medical episode while they were in bed. Her body was never found, something an author says casts doubt over his guilt. Cam died in 1979, still protesting his innocence, having maintained Ms. Gibson had stopped breathing and was already dead when he threw her body from the cabin's porthole, something he later described as beastly. He had spotted the 21-year-old on the ship after it departed from South Africa, consistent with their fellow passengers. Cam, then 30, initially denied seeing her, but later admitted she had become ill while they were being intimate and was frothing from the mouth. He was arrested by police in Southampton after the cruise ship arrived from Cape Town. Actress Doreen Mantle, who later gained fame as Mrs. Warboys in sitcom One Foot Within the Grave, shared a room with Miss Gibson within the weeks before the trip. She said it had been understood she had a heart disease and was not a well girl before her death. Ms. Mantle said that Miss Gibson fainted during rehearsals and her lips would often go blue. But she didn't give evidence at Cam's trial after her father persuaded her to remain in South Africa and not become involved. Her version of events corroborated evidence submitted by their colleague, Mike Abel, who told the court he had also seen Miss Gibson faint and froth from the mouth during medical episodes. But this was dismissed by the judge after Miss Gibson's mother gave evidence stating her daughter had been in healthiness. Winston Churchill said that Cam was originally sentenced to hold but avoided execution because a no-hanging bill was being discussed by Parliament. Reacting to the news, Prime Minister Churchill said, "The House of Commons has, by its vote, saved the lifetime of the brutal lascivious murderer who thrust the poor girl he had raped and assaulted through a porthole of the ship to the sharks." Cam's sentence was commuted to captivity. He was released in 1959, but was convicted some years later of other sexual offenses and spent his remaining years behind bars. Number 7. The Demon Woman. 35-year-old Danielle Harkins appeared to be a run-of-the-mill, harried but kind teacher who had an excellent relationship together with her students. She taught at the Lealman and Asian Neighborhood Family Center in St. Petersburg, Florida, and was browsing at divorce and litigation over her 2 young children. Soon after her divorce was finalized in 2012, Harkins began acting strangely. She developed an obsessive interest in religion, especially angels and demons, and pitched up at a fellow teacher's house at some point telling her "You're okay, and you don't have any demons." On 9 June 2012, Danielle Harkins got a gaggle of her students to hitch her in creating a little bonfire near the St. Petersburg Pier. The scholars thought that their teacher had planned a campfire evening for them and were completely shocked when she started accusing them of being infested with demons and demanding they be exorcised. Confused and surprised, they half-heartedly followed her instructions to bop round the fire while chanting "But drew the road" when Harkins told them to chop one another so as to free their demons. Infuriated by their refusal, Harkins doused one among the young people's hands in perfume and set them alight. She slashed another student with a broken bottle and cauterized the injuries with a key she had heated within the fire. She forced several others to chop themselves and similarly close the injuries to stay the demons out. It took a couple of days for the scholars to talk up about the incident, and even after Harkins was arrested, the scholars weren't terribly forthcoming with information on what had happened. Harkins, too, refused to supply any details. She was released from prison after serving only 6 months. Number 6. Pool of Blood. Returning to their posts after a mellow and relaxing school holiday, teachers at Riverwood Grade School in Sydney's southwest were expecting to possess a lazy first day back. Nothing could have prepared them for what they stumbled upon once they entered the school's cubby house that day. However, on the ground was a pool of blood, later established to be human, and being quite a liter's worth. Police noted that whoever's blood it had been would have needed extensive medical treatment due to the acute blood loss. Despite an in-depth search of the encompassing and increasing areas, no victim was found. There was also no blood splatter or trail resulting in or from the cubby. The lack of a victim was extremely strange considering the varsity was enclosed with a 2-meter-high barbed wired fence, and it might are impossible for the injured person to scale it. Tests later showed that the victim was male. The case remains unsolved. Number 5. 75-year-old Marina man found dead on apartment balcony. Residents of the Marine Del Rey apartment house in Los Angeles were amazed to ascertain a really realistic-looking Halloween prop on one among their neighbors' balconies in October 2009. The prop consisted of a figure slumped over a chair and what seemed like bedding draped over the railing. However, when deputies were called to the building a couple of days later, residents were beyond shocked once they realized the Halloween decoration they'd been gawking at that week was actually the decomposing body of 75-year-old Mustafa Mohammed Zayed. Zayed had committed suicide by shooting himself within the head with a shotgun. A suicide note was found near the corpse. Zayed had lived within the building for 34 years and was a structural engineer who had worked on high-rise buildings in downtown Los Angeles. Number 4. The Criminal of Isle of Butte. 6-year-old Alessia McPhail was visiting her grandparents on the Isle of Butte in 2018 when the unthinkable happened. 16-year-old Aaron Campbell crept into the family's home, looking to steal cannabis. When he saw the little girl sleeping, he carried her to an abandoned hotel and raped her. He then applied pressure to her face and neck until she stopped breathing. Her naked body was found on the Isle of Bute after she was reported missing on the morning of 2 July last year. The killer caught by his mother's camera. A post-mortem revealed the little girl had suffered 117 injuries. During his trial, he also claimed that in the year preceding the murder, he constantly thought about killing or raping someone. Campbell was amused that it took police 2 days to arrest him and said it took great restraint on his part to keep from laughing during the trial. While confessing to the murder, he even told authorities that he was quite satisfied with the murder. He was handed a 27-year sentence, which was reduced by 3 years in 2019. In a witness impact statement, Alesha's mother Georgina Lockrane said her world had been ripped from her. She added that she had nightmares about what happened to her daughter. Number 3. Death of John Lang. The man who predicted his own death. In 2016, a dead man was found in a burning home in central Fresno. The Fresno Police Department's public information officer reported at the time that 51-year-old local activist, John Lang, was found with stab wounds to his abdomen and upper back. A spokesman for the Fresno County Sheriff and coroner said that Lang had 3 superficial, self-inflicted stab wounds to his chest and no cuts on his back, despite initial reports by law enforcement. And also said that investigators believed Lang started the fire himself. Lang's death has caused some online controversy. 5 days before he died, Lang left ABC 30 reporter Corin Hoggart a Facebook comment saying, "Corrupt Fresno cops are going to try and kill me this weekend, possibly tonight. This is no joke." On his own social media accounts, he posted several rants about the Fresno Police Department and County Sheriff's Office being corrupt. Lang followed this up with videos of a security camera outside his house which he claimed was being used by police officers to watch him. Multiple alternative media outlets reported on Lang, and a video, allegedly made by a Bakersfield section of the hacker group Anonymous, was posted to YouTube threatening revenge against the city of Fresno. Several websites and forums have since claimed that Lang may have been truthful in his claims that he feared the police would kill him. Some are also convinced that there are several corrupt police officers in the Fresno Police Department who would have done anything to silence Lang. Number 2. Baby tragically dies after siblings placed her in the oven. On 16 November 2015, 25-year-old Raquel Thompson and her 21-year-old boyfriend, Cornell Malone, left her 4 children unattended in their Northeast Houston apartment to get pizza and visit Malone's brother. They returned after midnight to the sound of the children, all under the age of 5, crying. Entering the kitchen, they found their oven range overturned. When Malone picked up the range, the youngest child, 19-month-old Zyra, fell out of it. In a horrifying account, court records show that the 2 3-year-olds told investigators that one of them put the baby in the oven and the other turned it on. They said they made the oven hot and that the baby was kicking the oven door from inside. When their mother got home, she tried CPR, but Zyra had already suffered fatal burns. It's not the first time the couple have been under fire from Child Protective Services for leaving the children alone. Court records show Thompson told officials she frequently left the children to drive her boyfriend to work. And caseworkers say she did so without informing the kids' grandmother, who also lives in the same apartment complex. She also reportedly has driven the children without a license or car seats. Thompson and Malone both faced 2 years in prison on charges of child endangerment. At the time of her court appearance, Thompson was 8 months pregnant with her 5th child. Number 1. The murder of Eileen Ritterson. On 12 June 1977, George Childs and his son were driving down Hollycong Road in Buckingham Township when he spotted an object in the underbrush of a steep rise known as Church Hill. He drove across the railroad tracks and headed up the hill to get a closer look. He and his son then made the terrifying discovery of the naked body of a woman lying face down about 10 feet down the slope. The horrified father and son continued up the hill to the next home and asked the resident to call police. There was a body on the side of the mountain. 20-year-old Sean Eileen Ritterson had been eviscerated, with nearly all her lower organs removed. Her insides had been washed out and stuffed with a towel. She had bruising at the back of her scalp, indicating that she had been struck with a heavy object and had multiple stab wounds to her chest. At the time, detectives thought the viciousness of the murder may have been part of a dark ritual, or even to tear out an unborn child. The young woman's uncle, Harry Ritterson, was initially suspected of her murder, and many family members also believed that he was the murderer. However, he was never charged, and no other suspects were ever identified. Sean Ritterson's murder remains a mystery.